If you're a non-US business owner watching this right now, understand that you're leaving millions of dollars on the table just by not having a US LLC. Advantages such as lower taxes, higher access to capital at lower interest rates, access to a bigger market, and premium credit cards that give you free travel. See, while your US competitors are leveraging these financial advantages, most non-US business owners believe that a US LLC is illegal or not for them. This is completely false. In fact, most non-US business owners should be taking advantage of the US LLC to gain these advantages. That's why in this video, I'm going to break down the legal reasons why you should leverage a US LLC, the same pathway that has helped over 500 plus of my non-US clients do the same. Now, before you click away thinking that this is too good to be true, or this must be some gray area loophole, let me be crystal clear about one thing. Everything I'm about to show you transparently is 100% legal. In fact, this pathway has been verified by my CPA on our team. The US government has specifically designed these incentives to attract international business and investment. They want non-US entrepreneurs to do this. The problem is that most just don't know the exact legal process. So keep in mind that this is educational content and everyone's personal situation will be different. So make sure to consult with a lawyer or a tax consultant for your own personal situation, because I don't want to take that liability. So let's get straight into it. Most non-US business owners don't even know that they could be leveraging the US LLC. They don't believe that they can form a US LLC by not living in the US. And that's previously something that I used to believe in years and years ago. So personally, when I moved out of Canada to live in Dubai in the UAE, I thought that because I lived in Dubai, I had to only have a company in Dubai, without realizing that when I was living in Dubai in the UAE, I was only subject to the financial resources that were available in Dubai. Now, just a few years later, after I learned about the LLC and how you don't necessarily need to live in a location to necessarily have a corporate structure, take advantage of the credit system, take advantage of banking and whatnot, I learned that the US LLC is, I would say, the most powerful thing that you can kind of leverage. And I'll get a bit further into it, but I kind of want to break down the legal reasons and break down a few of the myths that you might have heard online. So it is the fact that if you want to incorporate a company in Delaware, Wyoming, it does not require citizenship. If I wanted to do this right now, I can go on the state secretary website in Florida and incorporate a new company, right? And we do this on a daily basis for our own clients. You can incorporate a new company without citizenship. Now, you might be asking, well, okay, cool, sounds good. I'm getting a new corporation, but does that mean that I'm getting taxed in the USA as well as being taxed in my home country, right? Like, what's the point of having a corporation in my home country and a corporation in the USA? I'll break this down, don't worry. A huge myth when it comes to the United States is that whatever you do in the USA, you'll pretty much be taxed. And that is absolutely false. When it comes to corporate structures and whatnot, especially for non-US citizens, what we've seen with our own private clients is that a large majority of them don't even pay any US taxes. Now, that doesn't mean that they pay absolutely no taxes. If you, for example, live in the Netherlands, right, you might have a US LLC, which is pretty much a pass-through entity in your Netherlands corporation, right? Now, you can technically pay 0% taxes with your US LLC, and I'll get a bit more into the tax statutes that actually confirm that this is possible as a non-US citizen, non-US resident, but you can pretty much receive payments into a US LLC, send those payments into your parent company, which is your Netherlands corporation, and in your Netherlands corporation, then you'll need to be compliant to those tax laws. So you're not being taxed on both corporations. This is an advantageous thing that you can leverage as a non-US citizen. And so that you understand how powerful this is, especially for a business owner, if you're spending more than $10,000 per month on your business, why doing that kind of structure is actually much more advantageous than just having a corporation in your home country. And I've actually got a few stories personally and with a few clients that I can actually break down. Now, here's the thing. Does that mean that every single non-US citizen doesn't have to pay US taxes if they have a US LLC, a US corporation? Everyone's situation will be different. If you have a C Corp, then you'll need to pay US taxes because that corporation is not a pass-through entity, it is a different type of entity. If you've got an S-Corp, firstly, you can't even have an S-Corp if you're a non-US citizen. I don't want to get too technical into this video, and that's exactly why if you're a busy business owner, you're making a lot of money, you can just apply down below and we can get on a call with you and we can speak about how this applies to your personal situation. But pretty much when it comes to taxes, if you want to take your taxes down to 0%, you've got to follow a few conditions. Firstly, you have to have a US LLC. Secondly, you cannot have any US sourced employees. Thirdly, you cannot have a significant portion of your income of that company coming from the United States. And then there's a few other details that basically confirm that you do not have to pay US taxes. I personally, I'm living in Canada right now. I have a US LLC. I don't pay US taxes, but I need to comply to the Canadian tax laws. And that's exactly how this would look like in your own personal situation. We have clients that personally, they've got a residency in Dubai or in Paraguay or in other countries where that residency has 0% taxes, right? So they have their US LLC and they live in Paraguay or a 0% tax location. Just because you live in a 0% tax country does not mean that you've got the full stack of advantages, right? And we're going to get into that in a bit of time because honestly, the biggest power of a US LLC is the fact that you basically unlock the strongest financial system in the world. So let me talk to you about the legal tax statutes because honestly, a lot of our clients don't even believe that this is possible until we really give them the proof. So basically in the tax code section 861, defines US sourced income and helps determine whether income is US taxable. As well as IRC section 871B, non-resident aliens are only taxed by US sourced income. IRC section 864C defines effectively connected income, foreign sourced income with no US business connection to not ECI. And pretty much as long as you follow by the requirements and you comply with US tax law, that pretty much means that as a non-US citizen, non-US resident, you do not need to pay US tax. And again, this is educational content. Everyone's situation will be different. But now let's move on to the real reason why a US LLC is so powerful. I talked to you about why an LLC is not going to put you in a disadvantageous position. Everyone believes USA, you get taxed, you'll get into problems. That's absolutely not true. 500 plus clients we've worked with have not had any issues with US LLC. Now we're going to talk about the advantages that you're missing out on without a US LLC. The first one is the access to capital, access to US credit. So the United States has the most powerful credit system in the world. In fact, it is so powerful that it is one of the only countries that gives people access to 6 figures in available credit without any bank statements. They even offer 0% interest terms for business owners, right? So being in a capitalistic economy, being in an economy that favors business owners and has the strongest financial currency in the world, there is a reason why most Americans have crazy advantages that you won't find in any other country, right? So pretty much we've been able to help our clients get on average $76,000 within the first months as someone that's just starting out in the United States. And we've been able to help non-US business owners get up to $1 million worth of business credit. So that's one powerful thing, right? So business credit is something that you unlock if you have that LLC. The other thing you unlock is the 0% interest funding, right? I always like to ask this question. If I was to give you $100,000 right now at 0% interest for the next 2 years, how much more money would you make? Now, of course, the answer to that is probably a lot more money. And that's exactly why this is so valuable. As well as the fact that if you have business credit, that does not connect to your personal credit identity. In many countries, if you get over leveraged, you get into debt, you're in Europe or you might be in Dubai. In some cases, I've seen people go to jail as business owners just for trying in their own economy. So if you get in $100,000 worth of debt, which is a question that a lot of business owners like to ask, right? Like, what if everything goes to trash and I'm in debt? I'm in a bunch of debt, which by the way, like, if you're smart about this, in our program, we actually teach people to make sure that they don't get into bad financial positions, which by the way, like if you're a non-US citizen, you're making a lot of money, this is probably not you, but we do that just at our own discretion because if we get someone approved for a specific credit card, we are actually leveraging our own relationships to get you into that bank. And we don't want you to get into a bad financial position with that lender specifically. But I've seen non-US business owners leverage other credit systems and pretty much get penalized just for trying growing in their own economy. So along with your US LLC, you're going to get access to all this business funding, the 0% interest, these business credit cards. What about traveling and travel hacking and whatnot? In fact, the United States has some of the most premium credit cards in the world that allow you to transfer your points, that give so many different advantages when it comes to travel hacking, right? I personally have my own American Express from the United States, and I use this card all the time to go in all the airport lounges, to transfer my points to different airline partners, hotels, and whatnot, which has the most flexibility as well as the highest level of cash back when it comes to my spend. So you get massive sign-up bonuses, you get higher cash back, and financially, if you're a business owner and you're spending more than $10,000 a month, you are losing money by not going through this process. And lastly, part of the whole credit game is the ease of approval. It is much easier to get approved for loans, business funding, and whatnot in the United States with that financial identity as a non-US citizen. It's absolutely possible. Again, the first time that I heard about this, I thought it was too good to be true until I learned about this whole process. But the ease of approvals is much easier than if you were to apply in your home country. So bottom line, if you're not leveraging US credit, it's a terrible mistake that you're making. Then it is about banking access, right? So I see a lot of Europeans, people in different countries, having problems with account shutdowns, and now being a global citizen living in multiple countries, traveling a lot, they might get problems when it comes to banking. The fact is that in the United States, you have the strongest global banking infrastructure. By having a US LLC, you get access to accounts with Mercury, Chase Bank, Bank of America, all of the big banks that have high liquidity, FDIC insurance, and whatnot that will protect your cash. Instead of shutting down your accounts and freezing your money, these major US banks will not be unprofessional, unlike most other countries. So pretty much when it comes to sending money, receiving money, you will not have a problem, especially with business accounts. And the interesting thing is that regardless of whatever happens on the news, a lot of people believe that the United States might be volatile or whatnot. Regardless of your political beliefs or where you are in the world or where you spend your money, I could be spending my money on Tokyo or I could be spending my money in Texas. I'll be treated the same regardless of wherever I live or whatever my business actually is. These US banks are very business friendly. Moving on to another reason why the US LLC is actually super powerful, it is the fact that you get access to US based payment processors. If you're in e-commerce, you already know how much of an advantage this might be, and you might not even realize that having a US based payment processor puts you at a severe place of advantage. And I'll kind of give you a quick story about this. When I was previously living in Dubai, I had my Dubai based company in the UAE, and I had a payment processor in the UAE. I was always having problems receiving payments from Europe as well as the United States because Dubai was a less trusted payment processor or whatnot. So I was having a lot of hard times when it comes to processing payments. And personally, I've seen a lot of non-US citizens have issues with those UAE payment processors. I'm not talking bad about Dubai. I love Dubai, but this is just kind of like a financial move that you've got to make when it comes to putting yourself in a place of severe advantage, because reducing your taxes is one move, which is good, which is a defensive move, right? You're like saving more money, but getting access to these extra variables, which is the payment processing, the capital, the cash back and whatnot, it's a financial advantage that allows you to scale more, right? Because tax minimization is something that is a defensive move. And getting access to credit and whatnot is an offensive move. And what I've noticed is that a lot of business owners like to make defensive moves more than offensive moves. And that's what we're trying to do over here, right? So just to go back to the story, with payment processors, you'll have lower fees. And the fact that you're leveraging a US LLC is a more trusted source. You'll have less declines, you'll have more security, and your clients will trust you more because you have a US based LLC and your payment processor is through the US. Now, talking about the last reason why a US LLC is so advantageous is because it gives you access to US real estate opportunities and investments. When it comes to US real estate, you've got the highest cash flowing sector pretty much in the world when it comes to investing your own money. I've seen a lot of Europeans have a hard time with real estate in their home country, and they want to enter the American markets. Firstly, they don't even believe that it's possible until I talk to them about the LLC and the fact that they can actually open up accounts in the USA. So when it comes to investments, and let's talk about real estate quickly, typically as a foreigner, your down payment, if you were to buy a new house in the United States, is pretty much 2 times as much of a down payment, as well as 2 times as much of a interest rate that you're going to pay on your mortgage. The interesting thing is that if you establish yourself in the American credit system, you're able to pretty much get the same kind of terms that American citizens would get. So the same kind of low interest rates and the same kind of low down payments when it comes to purchasing a property. So pretty much doing this puts you in that advantageous position for investment, as well as the fact that you get access to other opportunities, investments, and whatnot. The interesting thing is that if you eventually want to sell your company, selling your company through a US LLC is a much more robust way and easier way for investors to invest in your company, as if you had a foreign company in a different country or whatnot. It unlocks a certain level of capital. Now, I've shown you exactly how this works because I've seen what happens when non-US business owners finally take advantage of the American financial system. But here's one thing, this opportunity will not stay open forever. Banking regulations always change, tax treaties always get renegotiated. So the longer you wait, the more complex this will become. Every month you delay getting access to the system will cost you higher fees, missed opportunities, and competitive disadvantages. The founders who are winning in this global marketplace aren't necessarily the smartest or more talented. They just have access to a better financial system. It's as simple as that. So if you want to get access to the same financial advantages that me and my private clients that personally do not live in the US have, I've put together a free community for people just like you. A community of over 1,000 plus non-US business owners taking advantage of this financial system. Now, keep in mind that I do not sell courses and I never plan on doing that. We exclusively work with non-US business owners who want to leverage our banking contacts, our lending partners, and our service team in the US to get access to American credit faster. So if you want to learn more about this process, this information is free. So click the link below to join this community and get the roadmap that's helping non-US business owners get access to the most powerful financial system without changing citizenships, without creating fake companies, and without relocating to the US. Don't let another month go by watching your competitors leverage stronger financial tools. If you've enjoyed this video and you've got questions about getting access to American credit, drop a comment below and I'll be sure to respond. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.